My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Today on the podcast, we have Mike Mills. Mike is a certified personal trainer, corrective exercise specialist, nutrition coach, and has a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of Southern California. Mike is a wealth of knowledge on nutrition, and today he will go over his 10 holistic health hacks to help your body live to its optimal potential. Please welcome Mike Mills.
It's good to be here, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Mike, thanks for coming on. You are a wealth of knowledge in many areas, nutrition, personal training, and everything. Mike, where are you from originally?
Chicago, Illinois, which feels weird. I never say Illinois because I feel like Chicago owns Illinois. Like there's nothing else in Illinois aside from Chicago. I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised.
Wow. And were you initially into sports growing up as a kid, or is that something you found later? Or
Actually, no. I was that nerdy kid that never really got picked for the teams. I don't know who decided that was a good idea to have like team captains that get to play like favorites and just really make you hate your life because you weren't born with an athletic silver spoon in your mouth. But I was a very temperamental kid, unfortunately, growing up. I wasn't picked for sports. And I wouldn't pick me either. I wasn't very gifted athletically, but I discovered my latent athletic talents later in life. I first got my first taste of my passion for fitness when I was about 15. I started taking Hapkido classes just a couple blocks away from where I lived at this place called Keller's Martial Arts. Still exists to this day, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So this is back in 97, 98. I was about 15 years old, and yeah, that was a very transformative experience for me. It was the first time in my entire life where I felt like it was safe for me to cultivate skills without feeling judgment from other students. And I think martial arts does a really good job of that, helping cultivate talent and perseverance without the team dynamics of competition. You're only competing with yourself.
Absolutely. So what did you find after martial arts? Did that kind of lead you down another path?
Yeah, so my martial arts instructor, Master Keller, who's a great guy, his arms were as long as his legs, I swear to God. He was built like a monkey, like an 80s rock star, rocking the mullet and everything, headbanger, martial arts master. I love that guy. He called me Bruce, which I took as a term of endearment.
As in Bruce Lee?
Like Bruce Lee, yeah, because I was this very lithe, very skinny, very thin, but pretty strong and really fast for my size. And when I started getting into training with Hapkido, I started building a little bit of muscle. So I wasn't just skinny, I was lean and developing muscle. And I was like, man, muscles look good on me. I should figure this out. So the quest began, and I joined, I think it was called Powerhouse Fitness back in the day in Chicago. I don't know if they still exist. I joined a gym and just rattled my brain doing probably all the wrong exercises. As most young people, they do the best they can.
Were you just kind of looking around the gym and seeing what everybody's doing and then just giving it a shot?
Exactly. I'd look at some guy that looked like he had a good sense of what he was doing because he was either big enough or strong enough. He was doing something that impressed me. And I'm like, I'll just kind of follow that guy's routine and see what happens. It's funny because as a professional, I see that there's a big problem with people needing to get certifications or licenses to do things like a license to drive or ride a motorcycle or something like that. There is absolutely no license or certification required, no real formal education beyond PE teachers, which, bless their hearts, are trying the best that they possibly can to teach about exercise and the fundamentals. So I blame society. I blame society. But yeah, I did a lot of things the wrong way. But over time, that tenacity and commitment just built. And eventually I learned a lot as a result of getting into personal training. I learned about exercise science and functional anatomy. And it really helped accelerate my growth.
Were you taking classes, or you just kind of researching everything you could? Or
I remember having this functional anatomy book that was basically bodybuilders with sort of cartoon anatomical references overlaid to the pictures.
Really? Yeah, that's cool.
Well, actually, there weren't even pictures. They were artist renditions. But it was actually really impressive. And I was learning about the best ways of hitting triceps and distinctions between the lateral head, medial head, long head, the short head of the bicep, the long head of the bicep. So I was learning about all these distinctions. in bodybuilding techniques and how it pertained to anatomical development. But I didn't really get into the functional aspect of anatomy until I started working at where I inaugurated my career at Equinox Fitness Passage back in 2003.
What made you move to California?
Change of pace. I was studying to become an architect in Chicago, which is like the polar opposite of fitness professionals, I would say. So I was really passionate about drafting. As a young person, it was like my career of choice. If people asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be an architect. And my brother actually came up with that term first. I kind of stole it from him. And to his demise, he hated that I stole that from him. As he was getting into more visual, graphic arts and illustration and fine arts, I was actually pursuing drafting in high school. And I did 4 years of drafting, a couple internships, some competitions, and I was primed. I was ready to go.
What exactly is drafting?
Drafting is basically mechanical or technical drawing. It's something that is required for architects to learn as part of their craft. And I was doing all of that before getting into the philosophy and higher education of learning to become an architect and understanding why Frank Lloyd Wright was Frank Lloyd Wright and Mies van der Rohe and all these other greats over the years. So yeah, long story short, even though I was probably one of the more qualified and a little bit more seasoned veteran going into my first semester in architecture school at UIC Chicago, one semester and I burned out. I just didn't want to do it.
Really? Well, my freshman year roommate was a architecture major, and he would wake up at 2 a.m. and just start doing all his work. And all those kids just looked incredibly burnt out by finals. They don't sleep.
They don't care. It's a weeder course. The professors on day one, architecture studio, tell you, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah. No, I don't care. Yeah.
Because expletively speaking, that happened.
Yeah.
They're like, we know you're freshmen. We know this is all very new to you. We know you have other classes. We don't care. You're going to eat here. You're going to sleep here. You're going to shit here. You're going to hate it. And if you don't like it, there's the door. Like one of those situations. And I'm looking around the room and all these people are looking really nervous. And I'm like,
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, 4 months later, I'm the one that disqualifies myself.
Yeah.
Which is tragic in ways. But it leads, this is a relevant story because it actually leads into how I discovered my passion for fitness.
And how did that happen?
Well, I was depressed. I was extremely depressed. Just teenagers in general.
Just burnt out.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, I was suffering from depression for a while and just completely burnt out. And I was just thinking like, man, what am I going to do with my life? And the one thing that actually made me happy consistently and thoroughly was exercise. It was probably the thing that saved my life.
Wow.
So it didn't matter if I was having a good day, a bad day, if I was depressed or excited about life. Going to the gym was always a hard reset for me, psychologically speaking.
Yeah.
I would go in, get my work done, and feel really good about the process and also about the results that eventually came. But the most important thing for me was the intrinsic satisfaction that I developed in the beginning, because the extrinsic rewards, seeing the results in the mirror, feeling more stronger, being able to lift more and all that stuff, that took a little bit more time. But the intrinsic satisfaction with the work that I was doing was instantaneous and very palpable. And that's something that I used.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I noticed that with myself when I'm just like, sometimes you just get caught in the office for 2 or 3 days. You don't really work out or anything. My mood just like plummets and there's really nothing to be depressed about. And then I'll just go for a bike ride, hit the gym, and within an hour, my mood is completely different. It's amazing what exercise can do for everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of research that shows the psychological benefits. And it's not just mood and emotion. I mean, it's everything. It's increasing interconnections in your brain between the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. It's good for Alzheimer's. The benefits of exercise training are pluripotent. And I dare say high-intensity training is probably better than low-intensity training just because the effect is greater.
Okay, so you're out in California. You move out there. And then so did you just want to become a personal trainer right off the bat? Or
as an architecture student refugee, as I like to call myself, in the wake of that chaos, like I said, I fell into fitness and it was the one thing that made me happy. And then I got prospected by a personal training manager at the Bally Total Fitness in Chicago that I was training at back in the day when Bally still existed, for those that remember. I remember him coming up to me and he was asking me a bunch of questions. He's like, I see you here often. Seems like you know what you're doing. You're very friendly. You're always talking to our members. I'm just curious. Are you a personal trainer? And I'm like, no, actually, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure this thing out.
I'm just a gym rat, yeah.
I'm just a gym rat, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I talk to people about their programs. I'm trying to learn from them. He's like, oh, okay. Because for a second there, I thought you were a personal trainer trying to poach clients. I'm like, no, Not at all. It's like, right? And it was like complete opposite. He's like, so, well, if you're not a personal trainer, would you like to become one? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never really thought about that before. And he's like, let me sell it to you. You get to set your own hours, you get decent pay, and you get to control people. I'm like, sign me up, man. That sounds really good. I kid about the control thing. There's definitely a coaching aspect to what a good personal trainer needs to do. And a good trainer isn't just creating a kick-ass workout during the session, but is inspiring their clients to do work in between sessions as independent practice and helping them just manage other aspects of their lifestyle.
That's huge. I feel like a lot of trainers, they're really good at what they do at the gym, but I feel like the best trainers allow their clients to be better without them there. They give them exercises to do when they're not around, and you're teaching them how to live a better lifestyle rather than just being with them. Yeah.
Kind of like that saying, you give a man a fish eats for a day, you teach a man to fish eats for a lifetime. And some of my most successful clients are the ones that are training with me only 1 or 2 times a week and just being rock star students.
Yeah.
Really taking that sort of academic approach to their training and just crushing it. I'm very honest with my clients. That's what's required. It requires a tremendous amount of tenacity, not necessarily time, but it requires tenacity and sacrifice, because there's going to be so many things in life, temptations or just external circumstances that can really perturb people's commitment. But I'm just there to reinforce and remind them that they need to stay on task if what they want is really that important. So I always tell my clients this. This is one of my favorite coaching cues, which is you can have excuses or you can have results. Pick one.
Yeah.
One. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways, yeah.
So, Mike, it looks like you've developed a nice program, 10 holistic health hacks. That looked very interesting. There's a lot of good stuff on here, very educational. Where did you come up with this? Is it all your own, or is it just a bunch of research you've done? If you can just run through a couple of these topics, because they're really great and informative.
Yeah, let me back up for a second, just finish the brief story about coming to Pasadena. So to start a certification process with NSCA, and then moved out to Pasadena back in 2003. And I was taken on as an intern before I was actually even certified with NSCA, working at Equinox Fitness Pasadena. And there I established my career and my passion for fitness. And I've been doing it ever since. I left Equinox after 2.5 years. It was just a conflict of interest. They were all about sales. I was mostly interested in quality of service and experience. And so I've been independent basically since the end of 2005, whereby I established Edge Personal Training, which was my own fitness studio for my own personal training practice. And then eventually evolved into Edge Holistic Fitness as I did more and more research on the mechanisms that influence fitness and fatness physiology. And what I mean by fitness and fatness is there are things that we do to improve our fitness. There are things that we do to deteriorate our fitness, and that makes us fat. And there are lifestyle choices. It's choosing to go to the gym or choosing to hang out with friends. It's choosing to eat a healthy meal that's high in protein. Healthy meal, I'm putting up the bunny ears here. Bunny ears are going up on healthy because it's very, very subjective. I believe in individual biochemistry influencing how people respond to both training and nutrition protocols. There's no one-size-fits-all methodology. Find what works for you and eat accordingly, but do not get on a soapbox and then tell everyone else that they need to do exactly that, promising the same results, because it won't work for everybody, despite their dedication and diligence. But getting back on task, I did a bunch of research on mechanisms that influence our fitness and body composition, trying to lose body fat and build muscle. And that basically got me on this path of coming up with Edge Holistic Fitness, which is the synergistic relationship between exercise, nutrition, stress management, and optimizing sleep. And that is the underlying foundation and inspiration for creating that document, that PDF, because I do a lot of talks on wellness for corporate wellness programs or just people that are interested in learning and just joining in on a workshop, for example. So I'll do talking points on, some of the top 10 strategies that people can implement in order to significantly improve fitness and fatness. That's the PDF they sent you earlier in the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So it starts off with customized macronutrients. So if you could just break down what are macronutrients and why are they so important?
Okay. So a lot of people are focusing on the bottom line, which is like, 2,000 calories is what you need if you want to lose body fat if you're a man, or maybe it's 1,500 or 1,600 for a woman. It's based on empirical data, whether our bodies actually need 2,000 calories to sustain itself and what the actual deficit should be, depending on lifestyle factors. And some people take it a step lower. deeper and they're like, oh, okay, so you're on a 2,000 calorie diet. Let's do what the USDA recommends, or dietary reference intakes. Well, there's these government agencies, basically, I can't remember exactly which one is which, that recommends that everyone on a 2,000 calorie diet should have about 300 grams of carbohydrates and 50 grams of protein and about 70 grams of fat, or whatever the case may be. So the macronutrients are the constituents that make up the total calories. So you have proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, but I really look at carbohydrates as net carbohydrates because dietary fiber is actually indigestible and does not have any effect on actual energy intake. It serves a very different role. Dietary fiber nourishes gut health and can have other ancillary health benefits, but there's no actual energy equivalent to consuming dietary fiber because it never ends up in our bloodstream.
And what are some examples of dietary fiber?
Great examples of dietary fiber are a lot of fruits and vegetables are high in fiber. For example, pears, I think, are really high in dietary fiber. Raspberries, oh my God, like almost half the carbohydrates in raspberries. A cup of raspberries has about maybe 15 grams of carbohydrates, like 7 of which are dietary fiber. So your net carbohydrate content for a cup of raspberries is only 8 because you're taking the total carbohydrate content minus the dietary fiber. That's your net carbs right there. Legumes are also a great source of dietary fiber, but they're high in lectins and other things that may influence or disrupt your metabolism or your gut health. So I'm not a really huge fan of legumes.
What, would they slow down your metabolism or?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many tangents to touch on. I'll keep this one brief. While animals have adaptive mechanisms, evolved mechanisms to attack prey or run away from predators, we have limbs, we can run, we can climb, we have teeth, we can bite, we have nails, we can scratch. Some animals have like vicious claws, right? Like
yeah,
the lions of the world. But plants don't. They're rooted. They can't move. So what are their protective mechanisms that they've evolved over the years?
Chemical
mechanisms. The plants are living beings. They don't want to be consumed. So they've adapted chemical defenses to avoid predation. I would say some of the more highly evolved chemical defenses are seen in legume kingdom or the legume family. So it's not just...
That's interesting. Okay.
It's not just edamame or soybeans, because I know that gets a lot of conflicting and controversial press when it comes to health. Some people tout it as a superfood. I think it's questionable at best, but there are a lot of intrinsic factors. Things are naturally occurring. This is not because it's GMO or because it's heavily manufactured and processed. Naturally occurring phytotoxins. There's a lot of them in legumes. Some people are better adapted at metabolizing them and negating the negative effects on the body, and some people not so much. And lectins are a big one, and they're known to disrupt gut health. It could actually help break down these things called tight junctions that are basically the stitching between the cells of our intestines that make sure things don't go between the cells. So they're kind of like blocked off alleyways. But if they're broken down, you can get into the bloodstream. Instead of going through the front door of the cell, you're going in between the alleyway of the cells, so to speak. And that's not good because now you're having all these unchecked things flowing through from the intestinal epithelium, and the space within the intestine is now getting into the bloodstream unchecked. And the reason why those epithelial cells and tight junctions exist is to regulate what gets in and what stays out. And it's really important that that function, that physiological function, is preserved.
Wow, that's very interesting. So do you do like a personalized breakdown for each client of how many like macronutrients they should be taking a day?
Yes.
That's great. It's like having their own like thumbprint. It's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. So there are genetic tests that you can do now that are getting pretty darn close at creating distinctions between macronutrient needs. You have these 3 basic categories, but of course there's low, medium, and high, I suppose, or slow, medium, and fast, however you want to look at it, between a high carb, low fat type individual, a high fat, low carb type individual. I hope I said that right. So the first one is high carb, low fat. Second one is high fat, low carb. And then you have something in between, which is like a medium, moderate amount of carbohydrate, moderate amount of fat. I think everyone should be on a higher protein diet, focusing on about at least 80 grams per a small person And if you're a bigger person that does a lot of resistance training or exercise training in general, that can go up to 200 or 250. So the range is really big. And that range also exists for carbohydrates as well. So I take into consideration what their metabolic type is based on empirical data that they have, or I just do a guess. I dare say in America, the majority of people that I work with that are overweight are probably on a high carb diet to begin with.
Right.
So if they come to me and they're like, hey, I have 30 pounds of body fat that I want to lose, and I do a nutritional intake and I see that they're on a high carb diet, I think it's a fair estimation and guess to say, you know what, let's just switch it. If you've been on a high carb, lower fat diet, let's switch it up a little bit and get you on a higher fat, lower carbohydrate diet. Push your carbs down and push your fats up and make sure that you're getting ample protein. But the macronutrients that I design, in addition to taking into consideration their genetic information, if it's available, and their lifestyle factors, are they exercising a lot? It's the muscle mass. The muscle mass is definitely way more important than total mass because if you think about it, muscle mass is metabolically active tissue. Adipose tissue in research has been shown to have hormonal effects, that it is a metabolically active aspect of our endocrine system. The more body fat that we have, the more it's secreting certain types of hormones, hopefully leptin and ghrelin to an extent. But don't quote me on that because that research isn't super fresh in my mind. But also, I think high body fat levels has also been associated with increased estrogen secretion, which is not good to have too much for women nor men. But anyway, generally speaking, aside from these small regulatory hormonal factors, adipose tissue is just there for energy storage. It's warehouse space.
Yeah.
Like a warehouse versus a retail space, warehouse, you're just storing stuff. All the activity, all the customers, all the action is actually happening at the storefronts.
Right.
Your organ systems, like your heart tissue, your liver tissue, your brain tissue, muscle tissue, huge metabolic expense. So the more lean tissue you have in your body and the more muscle mass you have in your body, the greater your total energy expenditure will be, and likely the more amount of carbohydrates and protein your body will actually need, even if you're a high-fat diet responder, so to speak.
That's very interesting. This is a little off topic, but how do you feel about like the ketogenic diet, all those diets and all that stuff? Do you think that's going to be changed in 5 years or like the research? I feel like all that stuff changes like over the course.
It does. I mean, look at the Atkins diet from, 10 years ago? Atkins diet was like a buzzword for me when I first started training, and it seemed ridiculous that people wouldn't eat any fruit or vegetables. But then again, I was drinking the USDA, RDA recommendations. The government's recommending that everyone should be eating about 60% of their macronutrients as grains and fruits and vegetables. Lots of grains. Holy crap. I was drinking that Kool-Aid, and I was having all of my clients doing that. So it seems really crazy to go to the extreme polar opposite and say very little fruit, all the vegetables that you want, as long as they're like basically just lettuce and dietary fiber, no carbohydrate content, no potatoes, essentially. Yeah, so that seemed pretty extreme to me. But now the Atkins diet, which was successful in ways, if you look at some of the research and the data, is now evolved into the ketogenic diet. And I'm sure there's distinctions between it. I'm sure it's not just a rebranding and repackaging of an old system. But the ketogenic diet is very extreme. It generally recommends that people consume 60 to 75% of their total caloric intake from fats. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are the type of person that responds well to a ketogenic diet, stay the course. Do what works well for you. Don't expect that to be the same for everybody. I have personally experimented with the ketogenic diet. It got me soft, meaning I lost some muscle. I gained a little bit of body fat. My weight stayed about the same, and this was after a month. My training sucked.
Really?
My glycogen stores very quickly got depleted, and I had to train my body to start oxidizing fat at a faster rate to keep up with that ATP demand, which is basically the energy currency that powers all cellular activity within the body. And the body will oxidize carbohydrates primarily to produce ATP and secondarily dietary fat. But in absence of carbohydrate, dietary fat becomes somewhat primary. This is where some of the research regarding high-fat, low-carb diets may be actually advantageous for endurance athletes. Because if an endurance athlete can train their body to rely on more dietary fat, for a marathon, for example, they can actually build that system, that physiological system that really pushes lipolysis and upregulates beta oxidation, which is essentially fat loss, fat burning in a nutshell, those two mechanisms combined. If you can get those two things happening while doing endurance training and preserve glycogen, then all of a sudden you can do that glycogen loading a few days or a week before, super saturate your glycogen stores, but your body's still very fat adapted. And now you're running, instead of running at 50-50 fat carbohydrate utilization for your race pace, maybe you're somewhere around 70% fat utilization, 30% carbohydrate utilization. So all of a sudden your glycogen stores at the end of the race are a little bit higher. You can push yourself a little bit faster.
Yeah. And now, aside from all these dietary fads and everything, the one thing that I think that's going to be around for a very long time that it just makes complete sense is intermittent fasting.
Oh,
which
yes.
is one of your points. I mean, our ancestors were not snacking out
20
hours a day. They would eat a big meal and then they would go rest and hunt for their next one. And they wouldn't eat for a very long time after that. And that just makes a lot of sense. Can you just go over, touch on intermittent fasting?
Absolutely. And it's something that I recommend to almost all of my clients that are interested in losing body fat. It's probably one of the easiest things to adapt into your lifestyle. And for those listeners out there that are rolling their eyes, give it 10 days. Give it 10 days. You can drink water, tea, black coffee, anything that doesn't have calories in it, you can use as a way of perturbing hunger. And eventually, after about 10, maybe 14 days, you should feel that your satiety lasts longer from your previous day, that the hunger really starts kicking in instead of at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whenever it is that you're usually having breakfast. It starts getting pushed further and further out, 11, 12, 1, 2. Right now, it's nearly at 1:10 p.m., and I still haven't eaten yet. So I'm not even hungry. You
got to push through those first 4 or 5 days, and then your body just starts getting used to it. And I've gone like 24 hours, which I never thought was ever possible. I was like, there's no way I can go an entire day without eating. And then it's just like, I could probably go longer.
It definitely can be. Long-term intermittent fasting for a whole day. I haven't really tried that much. I experimented with it once, actually just earlier in the week, incidentally.
Yeah, it kind of happens by accident some days. Yeah.
Sometimes it does. It's his lifestyle. I was really busy with work and I just found myself drinking coffee with MCT oil, which is like the bulletproof diet thing. And I wasn't hungry until like 8 o'clock at night. It was probably a full 24 hours from the previous day eating at 8. But anyway, let me get back on task. The typical intermittent fasting paradigm that I recommend is the 16-8 split, meaning if your last meal is at 8 o'clock at night from the previous day, go 16 hours after that to have your first meal the next day. That usually translates into stop eating at 8 p.m. yesterday, and then today start eating at 12 p.m. And that gives you a 16-hour window. That's about 25% increase in the fasting state versus the conventional diet where people are usually stop eating at 8 p.m. and they eat the next morning at 8 a.m. But some people, they're hanging out with friends at night and their last meal is at 10, their first meal is at 8 the next morning. That's a 10-hour window. So you want to extend that window as far as you possibly can because it confers health and fitness benefits. One thing is it just gives your body more time to clean out the GI tract, which has health benefits in and of itself. But studies have shown, and there's not a lot of research on it, I think it's emerging, I think you'll see a lot more in the next couple of years, it's increasing insulin sensitivity by increasing glucagon activity. And there's an inverse relationship there. As your blood sugars go down, and glucagon goes up to help release stored sugar within the liver, which is the liver's job, one of the liver's primary jobs in terms of energy metabolism and maintenance, is to keep blood sugar levels stable. So if you're not eating and your blood sugar levels drop, your liver will start pumping out glucose as a result of glucagon's activity. And those two hormones are antagonistic. So as blood sugar goes up from a meal, your insulin level goes up, glucagon goes down. If you're not eating, your insulin levels drop and your glucagon levels go up. And that helps regulate blood sugar systemically in your body. The cells of your body can get the glucose it needs to produce ATP and blah, blah, blah. So it increases glucagon sensitivity, insulin sensitivity, which is great. Even if people aren't worried about diabetes or prediabetes, the more sensitive insulin is, the less your body needs to secrete it to do its job. And insulin's job primarily is to facilitate the uptake of glucose from the bloodstream into target tissues, primarily brain tissue, muscle tissue, and also heart tissue, and also liver tissue too, because that's a huge storage site. So if it takes less insulin to do the same job, that's good because insulin levels are correlated with weight gain in general. And what I mean by that is if your insulin levels are surging high throughout the day, you're more likely to either build muscle or build body fat. It's a key primary anabolic hormone. And this can be used to your advantage. If you are exercising for the purpose of developing muscle mass, you'll want to strategically surge your insulin levels to help stimulate protein synthesis and glycogen resynthesis. So if the majority of my clients, regardless if they're on a low carbohydrate diet or not, there's this concept of nutrient timing, making sure that they increase their carbohydrate intake either before or after or both of their workout. So it's peri-workout, load up on your carbohydrates because it's going to help you not only with your future workout performance, but it's going to help you put on muscle mass. And this is actually great news. And this kind of goes into one of my other talking points in the top 10 holistic health hacking system that I put together, which is if people want to have a cheat meal, something that's usually really high in carbohydrates that they shouldn't be eating, you can actually ameliorate the negative effect of eating that thing by timing it in the post-exercise state when the body is more likely to oxidize those carbohydrates for immediate energy replenishment, ATP replenishment, versus synthesizing it into body fat to be used later. Because any macronutrient that we consume can either be broken down for immediate energy now or energy later. And if you're in a physiological state where your energy reserves are depleted right after a workout, for example, or right after intermittent fasting, if you haven't eaten for a bit, you're more likely to use that energy source, that carbohydrate that you consume.
So that's the time to eat the donut.
Yeah, that's the time. If you're going to have a donut, have it after intermittent fasting or have it after a workout, or even better yet, both. Work out in the fasted state and watch. You'd be surprised how many people can get away with eating a little bit of junk food. And I'm not saying go nuts and have of Krispy Kreme donuts, but you'll be surprised at what you can get away with. There's a little bit of nutritional murder that people can get away with if they take advantage of these hacks.
Nutritional murder. I like that a lot. Mike, I want to ask you about this other interesting point you have on your holistic health hack, fuel partitioning.
Yes.
What is that?
So that's what we just talked about a second ago, which is the strategic upregulation of macronutrients into key compartments. That sounds really technical, but basically post-intermittent fasting, post-exercise, your energy reserves are depleted and there is a greater chance that the thing that you're eating will be used to regenerate those energy stores. So let's just put it this way. Have you ever tried putting gas in a tank that's full?
Overflows.
Yeah, just overflows. It spills out. Physiologically speaking, that doesn't really happen. But let's just say that your muscles are full of glycogen, your liver's full of glycogen, and you just ate like a bagel with cream cheese with a glass of orange juice because like whatever, it's part of a balanced breakfast in America. You always got to have that glass of orange juice. So if your liver and muscle glycogen stores are full and you eat a high carb meal, where does that glucose go? It can't stay in the blood.
It just gets stored?
Into
the liver?
No, body fat. Body
fat. Oh, just adipose tissue?
Yeah, adipose tissue. Exactly. So that's one of the primary functions of adipose tissue is just to take on excess nutrients, not just carbohydrates. It takes on excess dietary fat and also dietary protein and puts it in, synthesizes it into triglycerides and stores it for later, which is a very convenient and physiologically advantageous mechanism that has allowed us to evolve really during periods of famine. So getting back to the meat of the matter, if you haven't eaten in a while, your muscle and liver glycogen stores are likely a little bit more depleted. Right after a workout, your muscle and liver glycogen stores are depleted. There's now room for those carbohydrates that you're consuming to be put into their primary places, which is the glycogen stores. There's a physiological imperative to replenish glycogen stores before putting it into body fat. So if you create the mechanism by which the body needs, not even wants, needs to replenish glycogen stores, and you consume carbohydrates in that state, then you're more likely not to store it in body fat. And that's what I mean by fuel partitioning. Foods that you're eating are being strategically sent to your muscle and your liver for storage or oxidation, but it's not going to the body fat stores. That's what we want. Essentially, if people want to lose body fat, they need to burn fat. They need to break it down, which is called lipolysis. It liberates from the storage. It gets circulated throughout the bloodstream. It's taken up by metabolically active tissues like muscle mass. and then it undergoes beta oxidation. If that happens in conjunction, you've lost body fat. But there can be a futile cycling situation, which I won't really get into. You can basically do half the equation and then it circulates around and then it just goes right back to adipose tissue stores. But ultimately, if you want to burn body fat, if you want to lose body fat, you have to prevent storage and maximize utilization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
You want to get the best of both worlds. And again, training is a great way of depleting glycogen stores so that the next carbohydrate meal that you eat is less likely to go to adipose tissue.
Now, Mike, there are millions of supplements out there. And
yes.
I guess it's all depending on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. But as far as everyday supplements, what do you see some supplements that are beneficial for mostly everybody? Because, I mean, you probably see a whole spectrum of different clients that are trying to do different things. But what are most of the supplements that you find yourself giving to most of your clients?
That's a great question. It does vary because there's definitely metabolic effects associated with particular supplements that actually do what they're intended to do. I call them effective supplements because there's a lot of supplements out there that are just garbage, either because there's no real efficacy, there's no scientific data or even anecdotal evidence that indicates that they work. But then there could be a quality issue where it should work, but you bought a crappy supplement. It doesn't do its job. So in general, I recommend that everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, I'm very not an absolutist, but I would say the vast majority of people should get on a high quality protein supplement. Now, if you're vegetarian or vegan and you're wary of whey protein or casein protein or things like that, there are plenty of...
Yeah, there's a lot of plant-based,
But the reason for it is because the American doesn't seem to be very protein-oriented. We tend to be very carbohydrate-oriented or secondary fat-oriented. What I mean by that is when you go to a restaurant, you're much more likely to get your carbohydrate goals filled for that meal and your fat goals filled for that meal and maybe not have enough protein in that meal. Unless you're a very low protein responder or you're a high protein responder and you're at like a steakhouse, you're eating like a 12-ounce steak. That probably has 60 grams of protein in it. But for the majority of people that need to be eating about 40 to 50 grams of protein per meal, and they're getting something close to like 20 to 30 per meal, there's a huge deficit at the end of the day. Protein shake as a supplement or a meal replacement is a great way of getting your protein goals satisfied. It's also very cost effective too. Per gram of protein, you're looking at pennies on the dollar. I would say eggs are a pretty inexpensive source of protein. Whey protein is a pretty inexpensive source. And also some other dairy products. And I know that everyone can't eat dairy and there's a lot of controversy regarding that. Again, find what works for you and play accordingly. So protein is number one. Number two, your real only health insurance policy in life is a multivitamin. What I mean by that is you have health insurance that you buy at health insurance companies, and hopefully you never have to use it because you don't want to be in a catastrophic accident or you don't want to be sick. But it doesn't really do anything until you use it, right? But a multivitamin will likely improve your immunity and reduce inflammation systemically in the body and help the body repair and heal itself through antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. And I call it the health insurance policy because people will never really know when it's working until the next cold or flu season comes around and all of a sudden they're not sick anymore, or they find themselves not having to do the flu shot just because their immune system is strong enough to prevent any sickness from actually setting in. So I think that a high quality whole foods based multivitamin is really important. There's of course synthetic vitamins and minerals out there. Some are better than the wholesome version. But if you can find something that is 70, 80% whole food based, that's probably the best way to go. And then beyond that, there's a bunch of fat burners that people can experiment with. Probably the best researched fat burner is green tea extract, which is EGCG. Do not ask me what that stands for. I always forget. EGCG extract, green tea in general, and matcha, which is green tea powder, super concentrated.
Is an antioxidant, like a strong antioxidant?
Super strong antioxidant. And there's something unique about those chemicals, which is it really helps increase lipolysis and or beta oxidation. Those are the two aspects of fat utilization, fat loss. So you really want those two to happen in tangent to effectively lose body fat. And now, part of it is because of the caffeine. Caffeine is well known to increase your metabolism by a small amount. depending on the research that you're looking at, it can increase lipolysis, but it doesn't necessarily increase beta oxidation that needs to happen with training to get the benefits of fat loss with caffeine. So some of those fat loss benefits are associated with the caffeine of green tea, but it's not 100% of it. The other part of it is because of these catechins, these polyphenols, which is what green tea extract is, these very potent polyphenols that have this very potent antioxidant effect on the body, and it stimulates fat loss, and it's pretty remarkable. Not everyone's going to respond, though. I actually really wanted to be a green tea responder. I megadosed for months. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Right.
Try, see what works for you.
And I'm glad you throw that out there, too, because it's very tough to say that this is going to work for everyone, like with anything. So to be an absolutist, like you said, it might work for you, it may not, but you just go for it and try it out, see if it does work for you.
Yes. I would say that another possible effective fat burner is acetyl L-carnitine, or L-carnitine in general. The acetyl L-carnitine version has been well studied. That also crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's supposed to also help with mood and maybe Alzheimer's. But there's L-carnitine fumarate, if I'm remembering that correctly. And then there's glycine propylene L-carnitine, GPLC, which I think is supposed to be like the end-all, be-all, but it's like 4 times more expensive than your traditional L-carnitine or acetyl L-carnitine variant. My recommendation, try acetyl L-carnitine. It's fairly inexpensive. You can actually get it in bulk powder. It kind of tastes like the sour part of sour candy without the sweetness.
Okay.
Kind of bitter. If you drink it with just water, it's not bad at all, I would say.
Yeah.
It's not bad at all. It's fairly palatable. If you put in like a splash of juice, like an ounce of juice, just to give it a little bit of flavor, it should be very tolerable. And then beyond the fat burner, if you're experiencing joint pain or if you're after ample protein intake, you're still having problems with muscle recovery post-exercise, I would get it on a potent anti-inflammatory supplement like, why am I spacing on it? Turmeric.
Ooh, turmeric's great, yeah.
Loaded with curcumin. And that's the active ingredient, the curcuminoids, which help down-regulate the inflammatory and upregulate the anti-inflammatory pathways. I think it may be associated with the production of prostaglandins E1, if I remember correctly. But again, don't quote me on that. There's a lot of information floating around this brain, and I can't keep it all at the forefront. But yeah, curcumin with turmeric is really good. Resveratrol is supposed to be really good as well. But I would say anecdotally, I've noticed a benefit from taking curcumin, and also my clients have as well. In general, less pain in the joints and a little bit more improvement in mobility, joint mobility as well.
That's great. Mike, so I usually ask this question at the end of every show. What is one piece of advice that you've really taken with you over the years that's really helped you out that you would like to share and just gift the audience with?
Yeah, this is going to be a hard pill to swallow. And this is just, that high intensity, short duration thing that we're talking about earlier, which is that most people don't have the time to invest in very long 6 hours a week, 7 hours a week training programs. They want the benefits of those long, dedicated training programs. They either legitimately don't have the time or they're just too lazy. But there's something to be said for ripping the Band-Aid off quickly. And I advocate and I actually train all of my clients, either 30-minute training sessions or 45-minute training sessions, and they walk out absolutely gassed.
Yeah.
And that is one of the most important things when it comes to fitness and fatness training. If you are looking to improve muscle mass and lose body fat, and that's the top of your list, high intensity is going to be your primary variable that you need to work with. Alternatively, if you were to tell me I am an endurance athlete, I want to improve my endurance performance, I want to take my race pace from 9 miles an hour to 9.5, or I want to cut down my total race time from 2 hours and 45 minutes to 2 hours and 40 minutes, there's no way around it. The bulk of your training is going to have to be lower, moderate intensity, longer duration. Just need that different physiological response to stimulate your mitochondria and other factors to increase aerobic respiration. High intensity training is actually anaerobic, and you can do that through lifting weights, or you can do that through sprints or high intensity interval training. Both are great. But the take home message is this, and this is something I see with all new clients that I work with. Let's just say I'm having them do a set of push-ups. And somewhere in the middle of the set, they want to stop. Let's just say that, let's make it personal, Kevin. How many push-ups do you think you can do?
Max, probably 50.
Nice. Very good.
On a good day?
On a good day, right? Right. Super fresh, well rested.
Yeah.
Just had a meal. Yeah, for sure. But let's just say that you were a client of mine and you weren't really adapted to training, but you were capable of doing 50 push-ups maximum if I really pushed you and you really let yourself get pushed. Typically, what I would see in this situation is you'd slow down and want to stop at around 25, maybe 35. Just as it starts getting tough, just as lactic acid starts accumulating, just as your muscles start shutting down, that's when people usually want to stop. But I encourage them and I coach them to give everything they got on every set, because it's not the beginning of a set of exercise that stimulates growth. It's the end. It's like anything in life, actually.
Right, yeah.
Starting is cheap. Anyone can start a relationship. Anyone can start school. Anyone can start a job, start writing a book, start this new thing. But it's finishing that requires dedication, and it's finishing that has the real development in it. So every set of exercise, regardless if someone's lifting something that's really heavy and they can only do, say, 8 or 10 reps, or something that's relatively light and they can do something like 20 or 30 reps, push yourself to failure. Burn yourself out, because therein lies the juice. And you have to squeeze hard to get that, like, just like a lemon. That last bit of juice takes the most amount of effort, but that is what it takes to actually thrive. And of course, the caveat, if it causes sharp pain, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, fatigue is generally uncomfortable. It's more of like a dull, achy feeling. But if it feels really sharp, don't do it.
Yeah.
That's a bad response.
Yeah. I loved that answer. That was great. Love that. Mike, where can people find you? Do you have a website, or are you on social media?
Oh, God, social media. I'm not so great at that. But yeah, you can find me primarily on my website, edgeholisticfitness.com. That's edge, like the edge of a knife, holisticfitness.com. Yeah, I'll leave it with that. I do have an Instagram account that I neglect that I will at some point start doing a little bit more posting on as I need to. You can find me at Edge Holistic Fitness there as well. And Twitter, it's Edge Holistic Fit, just F-I-T. There's no fitness at the end, just Edge Holistic Fit. And there's also Edge Holistic Fitness on Facebook. I'm based out of Pasadena, California, and I also specialize in worksite wellness. So if anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh, I'd love for this guy to come in and talk to our group of employees, I'd be honored to do that.
That's great. I'm going to throw in the Holistic Health Hacks PDF too on the show notes so everybody can check that out as well.
Please do. That is a kick-ass PDF that I put together for people to like take home and just be able to disseminate the information. When I do the presentation, it's a lot less words on screen, but that one is the take-home version, so people don't need to memorize anything. All the information's right there.
Perfect. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. I'm definitely going to have you on again at some point.
I would be honored. Kevin, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, E-A-S-E-L Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.